Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. You've caught me at a pretty bad time. I've been beating at this dead horse for the last couple of hours. I just really don't have time for an opener today. Sorry. Live service games are awful. Live service games are awful. Live service games are
awful, said everyone in existence ever. God, this business practice is just not pleasant to look at. Live service games refer to the recent practice of taking an unfinished game, shipping it out, and saying,
"We'll fix it in post."
They've recently become a bit of a stain on modern gaming, with many publishers using it as a way to ship out games that are very, very, very clearly not ready for retail. I mean, some of the stuff that releases nowadays is just embarrassing. It's pretty obvious when you start playing that the developers didn't have enough time to squash every bug, add every planned gun, or in some cases, finish development at all. Now granted, this was a beta, but it reminds me of the first time I played Battlefield 2042. At some points, the entire ground would turn into an Eldritchian horror without notice or warning, which as far as I'm aware was not the nicest experience for those with epilepsy. And that was somehow the least of that beta's issues. It was filled with constant errors, bad AI, boring maps with little weather effects, errors, more errors. It was filled with errors.
Now I don't want this to be a complete dig at live service games. They can actually be quite good. If the game you receive is finished at launch, that is. But the recent trend of unfinished live service games are actually pretty easy to sniff out. All you need to do is pick up your game case, see if it says Call of Duty on the front, and hey presto, you've won.
Modern Call of Duty is like watching your 14-year-old mopey teenager be taken out back and shot. You could argue Call of Duty was never that excellent to begin with. I mean, the campaigns are usually a nice way to kill 3 hours, and Zombies have shown a lot of quality with its narrative over the last few years. But walking into a multiplayer lobby from the years 2007 to 2013 just feels like having your ears ripped off.
I didn't even know half of those slurs.
Yearly releases didn't help either, even with the 2 and later 3-year development cycle. Call of Duty fatigue set in around 2014 with the release of Advanced Warfare, which was widely known as being a desperate attempt to cash in on the trend of advanced movement shooters like Titanfall. But after struggling with mountains of cash throughout 2014 to 2019, Activision decided that Call of Duty needed a facelift.
4 times the charm, am I right, dog?
You have 5 days left to live. So in came Call of Duty Modern Warfare, a reboot of the classic Modern Warfare series to fully bring the franchise into a new, dark, gritty, children-murdering era. With the addition of shooting kids behind Peggy 18 safe smokescreens came the abolishment of paid DLC and the introduction of season updates. Every season brings new weapons, new maps, operators, guns, and what feels like a 200GB update to the game, all for free. And in fairness, I think Modern Warfare is probably the only Call of Duty that could justify receiving content in this way. As far as I can tell, everything launched fairly smoothly in terms of bugs and glitches. Weapon balancing is a whole other can of worms I really don't feel like opening today. But as Modern Warfare made, I don't know, a whole lot of money, Activision decided to try and keep the hype train going with Black Ops Cold War.
Huh. Looks like everyone has dyspraxia now. I think we all know about the dyspraxia outbreaks by now. Took place in 2020, shut down a lot of industries, led to poor motor skills and delayed releases across the board. But Activision pulled through. For better or for worse.
I went through a bit of a Call of Duty phase back in 2021. In fairness, I was 15 years old during a global dyspraxia outbreak with no walls to talk to. There wasn't really much else for me to do. Black Ops Cold War was 2020's Call of Duty, and oh boy did it show. You wouldn't know it now by looking at it, but this game had constant glitches and bugs when it launched, and a complete lack of content. It launched with 5 assault rifles, 5 SMGs, only 3 snipers, all of which were terrible by the way, 3 pistols, only 2 shotguns for crying out loud. But in comes post-launch to save us all as content slowly gets trickled out over the course of the year. But this 1.0 release, I mean, this is just not acceptable. How can video game companies expect people to be okay with this? I mean, there was only 1 zombies map in the game at launch. That's just dreadful. And it's not like Vanguard was any better off. That game's just about wrapping up, but it still looks just unfinished. In fairness, Vanguard did launch with a pretty sizable amount of multiplayer content, boasting 24 maps and a decent amount of guns. But the glitches, oh my god. And it wouldn't be until Season 4 that we got our first traditional zombies map. First traditional zombies map. Season 4.
That game sucked. But this one was pretty good. Call of Duty has shown what live service updates can do for a game, and what live service updates might have to do for a game. If a game launches with a sizable amount of content, then swell. If a game launches with a subpar amount of content, then updates are left to fill in the cracks, which can hurt the consumer's enjoyment of the game initially. But overall, it'll help a company deliver a game faster. A broken game that shouldn't be released, but still, I know I've just exclusively shit on Call of Duty for the last minutes, but they are far from the first game to try this tactic. We'll have to go back to the Stone Age for that.
Oh my god. Do I really have to explain Fortnite at this point? It's Fortnite. Well, probably not the first. Fortnite was definitely one of the first to offer updates in a game like this, inventing and popularising the Battle Pass system. For 950 in-game doubloons, you'll receive a 100 level system which gives you a reward for each level, as well as enough in-game doubloons to fund your next Battle Pass, free of charge. The only problem is when you get to the store and you think, well, okay, maybe the kids can go about the house for a few months. They know damn well what they're doing here. People are far more likely to spend those in-game doubloons on a skin rather than just save it for their next battle pass. That way they're forced into spending real money for the next season. Well, as much as an optional in-game purchase is forced on them anyways. Which turns out to be quite a lot. Just about every game features a battle pass of some kind nowadays, even the ones you wouldn't expect. Just this morning I went to make some toast and it told me that butter was a free tier 16 unlockable.
What the fuck?
Even full AAA games like Call of Duty or Battlefield, they have their own battle passes for you to buy, even though you've already spent $60 to $70 on the base game. Like, no! Why am I spending more money on these games? At least Fortnite is a free download, these ones are just leeching even more cash from me.
I said I was going to stop chasing on Call of Duty, didn't I?
But as much as I'd love to solely pin this onto EA and Activision, it's not like they're the only premium game to do something like this.
Do I even know you?
I get to talk about Splatoon? I get to talk about Splatoon! Oh my god, I love Splatoon! The world, the characters, the idols, the gameplay, except for you and you and you. The lockers are so funny, I have Moye just chilling in mine with a gun over his head. The community is so cool! Sometimes they make really impressive drawings and sometimes they make furry art, but it's all drawn on a Switch, so how can I complain? I may have overexerted myself. Splatoon is an amazing game, but it has a thinly veiled battle pass, so you know what this means. I mean, the battle pass is free. There's not a single in-game purchase in sight here. You just have the full catalogue available to you right from the start. No extra purchase necessary.
Okay, but surely there's a flaw in here somewhere, right?
Full single-player campaign, multiple maps, weapons, and unique weapon classes.
The glitches?
This is the single glitch I encountered in my entire time playing.
Well, here it is. I hate to shill, especially for Nintendo, but this is a live service game done right. Playing Splatoon 3 feels like playing the full premium release of the game. It's not like Call of Duty where it feels like a base or something that has to be built upon. This feels like a premium release. It does have an unlockable dab though. Despite that, this is proof that live service games do have potential and can be done right when they're not treated like necessary update. Okay, we were going to get to it at some point, we may as well talk about it. Here's Battlefield 2042.
Battlefield 2042 is a rushed, buggy mess. You don't even have to play the full game to know that, just look at anyone else who's reported on this release. I mean, it took them months until the first season was actually ready, and even that crashed on release. And the content just looks barren. I mean, one map? One map?
This is supposed to be when the content actually gets delivered. There isn't even a joke here, that's just inexcusable.
Now granted, Battlefield maps are about the equivalent of 2 whole Call of Duties, but still, one map after months of work is just poor. The game was already struggling with content levels and you get... I mean, even this roadmap looks depressing. But you just can't blame the developers in this situation. This is all very clearly the result of a rushed release by executives. I already touched on the issues from the beta that I played, but this game still had too many glitches moving into the full release. The only thing that could suggest is either development hell or a rushed release. And knowing the modern gaming industry, it was probably both.
As Shigeru Miyamoto once said, a delayed game is forever good, and I really like putting Sharpies in my mouth.
Battlefield 2042 was received poorly, and the game is now considered dead. I mean, 4,000 playing, Jesus, what does that say about the video game community? Could all of this negative attention, buggy launch, and drop in attention been avoided if the game had launched stably and with more content? Probably. Could launching with more content but having the rest of the DLC packs behind a paywall have helped? Probably not. Like it or not, live service games are deeply embedded into the industry now. Paid DLC definitely still exists, but it's reserved for more substantial story expansions. Locking extra multiplayer content for your game behind a paywall is never going to work in this day and age. Because ultimately, live service games keep the content tap flowing. It gives players a reason to keep coming back to these multiplayer games, and on paper, giving more content to the consumer isn't a bad thing. But in practice, yeesh.
So those are the more notable live service games released as of late. But that's not why I wanted to talk about them today, because over here at Unnamed House, I've been cooking up a storm. Meet the Unnamed House Brawl Pass. We're not calling it a Battle Pass because we don't want you to associate this predatory practice with other predatory practices. Earn XP and level up to earn fun rewards. At tier 2, you earn this old sock, and at tier 30, you might just earn me.